They didn't yell, they didn't cheat, they just failed to respond. Why does this absence of action cause more pain than any fight?
And that right there, that is the dark psychological paradox of emotional neglect manipulation. It's a tactic where control isn't about overt aggression, but about deliberate, strategic deprivation. It's the weaponization of silence, of absence, of that space between words. It's a form of control so subtle that you often end up blaming yourself, believing you're just not good enough to earn the affection you're desperately craving.
So that's the big question we're tackling today, right? Why does this quiet neglect, this simple absence of action, so often cause way more psychological pain than a huge screaming fight? What is actually happening in this dynamic that just systematically dismantles a person's confidence? Well, together we're going to dissect this tactic piece by piece. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll identify what we're calling the weapon of absence and really define this covert aggression. Then, we'll map out the deprivation cycle to see the exact mechanism that's at work. After that, we'll get into the psychology of control to understand the deeper motivations behind it all. And then we'll finish with the most important part, reclaiming your emotional energy and finding the way out. So first up, we've got to identify the weapon itself. Think about it. It's not like a punch or a sharp insult. This is an attack that's defined by what's missing, by what isn't there. It's a form of aggression that's so subtle, so easy for the other person to deny, that if you're the victim, you can spend years just lost in this fog of confusion, constantly questioning your own reality, never quite able to put your finger on what feels so incredibly wrong.
So what are we really talking about here? At its core, emotional neglect manipulation is a persistent, ongoing pattern of failing to respond to a partner's emotional needs. And I really want to stress those words, persistent and pattern. We are not talking about someone having an off day or being a little forgetful. No, this is a strategic, calculated choice to ignore, to dismiss, and to withhold. And the goal? It's pretty sinister. It's to make you feel unworthy and insecure, so you become more and more dependent on them for even the tiniest crumb of validation.
And you know, this kind of behavior, it's not random. It's actually a hallmark of some pretty specific personality types. You see it with narcissistic types. They use it to get that constant admiration fix. You also see it with people who have avoidant attachment styles. They're just not comfortable with real closeness, so this keeps you at arm's length. And then there's the passive-aggressive type. For them, it's the perfect weapon. They can show they're angry without ever having to actually talk about it. But for all three, the bottom line is the same. It's all about control through passivity. So what does this actually look like in real life? Well, it often comes down to these simple but absolutely devastating phrases. I bet you've heard them. You're overreacting. You're just too sensitive. Or the classic, you're being so needy. This is dismissiveness 101. Just when you finally work up the nerve to say, hey, I'm feeling hurt, bam, your feelings are just shot down. You're basically told your reality is wrong. It's a nasty form of gaslighting, really, designed to make you question your own sanity.
And here's the real kicker, the whole point of this tactic. The ultimate goal is to create and maintain a power imbalance. That's it. By deliberately holding back that emotional connection, they put you into a state of, well, chronic emotional starvation. And that forces you into this desperate one-down position where you're just constantly seeking, constantly chasing, constantly trying to earn the kind of basic connection that should just be there in a healthy relationship.
Now, what makes this so incredibly damaging is that it isn't just a one-off thing. It is a systematic, predictable cycle. It's like a machine, really, one that's designed specifically to grind down your self-worth over time. So let's pop the hood and see exactly how this machine works. Okay, so this whole mechanism, it runs in 3 stages, and they feed right into each other, creating this really nasty feedback loop. It all starts with stage 1, emotional deprivation. That kicks off stage 2, a frantic chase we call compensatory pursuit. And when that chase inevitably fails, well, that brings us to stage 3, this crippling self-doubt and dependency. Let's take a closer look at each one. This really paints a perfect picture of the huge imbalance at the heart of this thing. Just look at it. On one side, you've got the target, who's basically starving emotionally. So what do? They pour a massive amount of energy into fixing it. They're planning things, trying to please, always initiating, even apologizing, all in this relentless pursuit for connection. And on the other side, the manipulator is barely lifting a finger. They give you the absolute bare minimum, they keep their distance, and then, just when you're about to give up, they throw you a tiny crumb of affection. You know what that is? It's called intermittent reinforcement. It's the exact same psychological trick that makes slot machines so addictive. It gets you completely hooked, always hoping that this time, this next pull of the lever is going to be the jackpot. And over time, the result of this completely exhausting cycle, it's a psychological train wreck. I mean, think about it. You've poured all this energy in, and you've gotten almost nothing back. Your brain is desperately trying to make sense of it. And the story it tells itself isn't, hey, maybe this other person is being manipulative. No. The story is, it must be me. I'm the problem. I'm just not worthy of their attention. And that right there is the moment your confidence just shatters. You internalize the failure, and you start to believe their neglect is actually a true measure of your worth. Okay, so we've covered the what, that's the neglect tactic, and the how, that's the deprivation cycle. So now it's time to dig into the why. What is going on under the surface here? What are the deep psychological drivers that make one person withhold and the other person keep chasing in this really destructive dance?
All right, let's start with the manipulator. For them, it usually boils down to two things: low effort control and protecting their own ego. Neglect is kind of the perfect tool for this. It lets them control the entire emotional temperature of the relationship without ever having to do the hard work of, being vulnerable or intimate. Your frantic chasing gives them this constant stream of validation. It's sometimes called narcissistic supply, and it just proves to them how important they are. And the best part for them? They get all this while spending almost zero emotional energy. It's a shield for their fragile ego.
But what about the target? Why do they stay? Why keep chasing? Well, the vulnerability often comes from a really deep unconscious place. Psychologists call it a need for wound resolution. See, for many people, this whole dynamic, chasing after a distant, cold person for affection, is a painful echo from their childhood. So the relationship becomes this subconscious mission to finally fix that old wound, to finally win the love they never got. And that creates this incredibly powerful, almost compulsive drive to make it work. Because on some level, they believe that if they can just get this person to love them, it will heal that old pain and finally prove they're worthy. And get this whole dynamic actually creates a powerful and addictive chemical cocktail inside your brain. The constant chase and uncertainty, that floods your system with cortisol, the stress hormone. That's the 85% of anxiety you see there. But then, in those rare, totally unpredictable moments, when they throw you that bone, a tiny compliment, a second of real attention, your brain gets a huge hit of dopamine, the reward chemical. And that little 15% feels so good, especially after all the stress, that it creates what's known as a trauma bond. It literally rewires your brain to crave the very person who's causing you all the pain. All right, we've exposed the tactic, we've broken down the cycle, we've looked at the motivations. Now we get to the most important part of this whole explainer. We're going to shift from just analyzing the problem to actually empowering you to solve it. So how do you break this cycle? How do you stop pouring all of your precious energy into a black hole and start taking it back for yourself? The defense strategy comes down to 3 key steps. And listen, these are not about trying to change the other person. That's a losing battle. This is about shifting your focus away from trying to earn their love and toward validating your own needs. So here they are. Step 1, name the deprivation. Step 2, assertively demand change. And step 3, which is the real game changer, withdraw compensatory pursuit. Okay, step 1 is all about a huge mental shift. You have to consciously stop blaming yourself. You've got to look at the pattern of their behavior and call it what it is, a control strategy. You literally have to tell yourself, this empty feeling isn't because I'm flawed. It is the intended result of what they're doing. Just recognizing that, just naming it, that's the key that unlocks the cage. The problem isn't you. The problem is their playbook. Step 2 is about communication. But this isn't about begging or threatening or having a big emotional blow-up. Nope. This is about making a calm, firm statement about a core need and what will happen if it's not met. Something like, if you can't be emotionally present in a consistent way, then I'm going to have to create some distance to protect myself. You see what you're doing there? You're setting a clear boundary. You're saying, this is the bare minimum for me to be in this relationship, and you're making it clear that your well-being is officially off the negotiating table. And that brings us to the final, and honestly the most powerful step. You have to withdraw the pursuit. You just stop the chase. That means no more bending over backwards to please them, no more performing, no more overanalyzing every little thing, no more apologizing for things that were never your fault to begin with. All that incredible energy you were pouring into them, you have to consciously take it back and reinvest it in yourself, in your hobbies, your friends, your health. You just stop playing their game entirely. So let's bring this all together. The essential truth is this. The neglect tactic uses distance as a weapon. It creates an emotional vacuum, and it does it on purpose to make you dependent. That feeling of emptiness, that's not a mistake. It's not a side effect. It is a meticulously crafted condition designed for control.
And we've seen how the pattern works, right? Their emotional deprivation forces you into that frantic compensatory pursuit. And that relentless chase, it's designed to fail, which leads directly to self-doubt and completely shatters your confidence. But here's the good news. Awareness is the way out. It breaks the whole loop. By naming the deprivation and withdrawing your pursuit, you reclaim your power. Because when you stop the chase, you're making a powerful statement. You're saying that your emotional worth is not, and never was, up for debate. It's not determined by their attention. Which really just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Your worth is inherent. It just exists, independently of anyone else's approval. So the real question becomes, why would you ever let it be determined by someone who has to deliberately starve you of affection just to feel powerful?